Welcome back to the Chronicles of the King podcast, where we take a deep dive into the life and legacy of Elvis Presley. I'm Megan.
And I'm Tessa, and we are two 20-something Elvis fans dedicated to keeping his legacy alive with a research-based approach.
Whether you're a die-hard Elvis fan or simply curious about a man who changed the course of music and culture, you're in the right place.
We are here to unpack the myths, explore the music, and get to the heart of Elvis's enduring impact.
Every other week, we'll bring you research, untold stories, and fresh perspectives on Elvis's journey. From his humble beginnings to his legendary performances, we're here to shed light on it all.
So settle in for a podcast made with a lot of TLC for the man himself, one story at a time. Hey guys, so we are so excited to welcome you to the first episode of our brand new series, which is titled Starring Elvis Presley. So we're going to be talking about all of the movies that he made. And for our first episode, we're going to talk about the 1950s movies, so the first four, and kind of give you a little rundown on them.
Yes, and so Tessa and I, we rewatched them. So we're all up to date. We did a little binge watching, but we're going to go in chronological order here. And the first one we have is Love Me Tender, which was released November 15th, 1956, which the day that we release this podcast will be the anniversary of its release. So quite exciting for us. And that movie was directed by Robert D. Webb. It was produced by 20th Century Fox, and it was originally titled The Reno Brothers. And then the cast included Richard Egan, Deborah Paget, William Campbell, Mildred Dunnock, and James Drury. Those are just some of the rundowns that we're going to give you of each film.
And anyone who knows a little something about Elvis knows that he had a big old crush on Deborah Paget. And so it's just kind of funny that his first film, she was in it. So the log line for the film, which is like a little bit of the rundown of what the film is going to be about, from the company themselves, from the distribution company, is at the end of the Civil War, a Confederate team is ordered to rob a Union payroll train, but the war ends, leaving these men with their Union loot until the feds come looking for it. So drama.
Drama. And all our notes, I feel like I'm gonna give it a new phrase, is girl paraphrasing.
Yeah, it's girl paraphrasing.
It's girl
because I was having too much fun when I was like watching these and then doing my little rundown of the plot, and I used girl lingo.
Girl lingo, of course. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna give you a little bit of a plot rundown, and then we're just gonna get into it, have a little chat session, I guess. So we'll go back and forth with this a little bit. So, of course, in Love Me Tender, Elvis plays the role of Clint Reno. That's where we get the name the Reno Brothers. And he is the youngest of four Reno brothers.
And Clint is the one, so the character Elvis plays is the brother who stays home taking care of their mother while the three older brothers go out to fight in the Civil War for the Confederacy, which, like, in hindsight, anyway, but like when I was rewatching, I was like, oh, I kind of forgot that this is like about the Confederacy. But
well, I mean, that's kind of what happens with the Civil War. But I mean, yes, Elvis was Southern.
I know, but I was just kind of like, ruh-roh.
Oh. Okay. Well, so during this, the family gets told that the eldest brother, Vance, was killed during the war. So, spoiler alert, he didn't, obviously, because without him, the plot wouldn't take off.
Right. So when Vance, oh, hi, Miss Kitty. When Vance returns home from the war, after 4 years, he finds that his brother Clint, played by Elvis, has now married his former sweetheart, Kathy. And Kathy is played by Deborah Paget. And he comes home and he's just like, hey, like, so good to see you guys. And then it's like, oh, actually, my girl married my brother. Awkward.
So obviously, a little bit of drama there. It's kind of got a little bit of a love triangle going on. So obviously, what are you gonna do? Vance is like, my brother's married to my girl. I can't really do anything. If they, split up, that's still awkward, just gonna say it. So Vance decides, you know what? I'm just gonna up and leave. And he said, I'm gonna leave to California. So obviously that's also gonna throw in some family drama.
There's major family drama in this.
Oh, then.
And then there's also some drama about the stolen like
Mhm.
union money, the $12,000, which like I didn't really, to be honest, I kind of didn't follow because
Well,
I
they
was
sold the
watching it
union
and I'm like,
money. The
okay,
unions were like, we want our money back because the war had just ended. Which I think the
yes.
whole thing is the war ended, they didn't know it ended.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the feds come to get Vance, the oldest brother, and then Clint gets roped into the Confederate gang that stole the money while he's trying
Mhm.
to free Vance from the feds. And then the truth comes out about Vance and Kathy that like she still kind of likes him, still has
He likes her.
it's
They were
holding
always
a
in love.
candle. Yeah. Holding a
Yeah.
candle.
And so obviously this whole thing, how else is it going to end? It's going to end in a shootout. So it's a shootout
It's the
kind of
Western
between,
vibe.
it's a
So,
Western vibe. It's the
mhm.
1860s.
uh,
So ends in a jealousy shootout over Kathy. And so Elvis's character Clint ends up getting shot and then ultimately dies in the end. And then cue family saw obsession and cut.
yeah, but before he gets shot, he shot his brother
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
he's jealous about Kathy. And
yeah.
then the brother
Which,
gets hit
okay,
in the arm.
it
And then,
she was his girl first.
yeah, but
I
they
get
thought
they're
he
married.
died.
Yeah, then he died.
But then, no, no, I'm saying like they thought
Hmm.
Vance was dead. So kind of fair
Oh,
game on
okay.
Clint's part. It's kind of fair game. Like you
That
think your
is true, I
brother's dead.
guess.
Like, anyway.
That's why the
And
family drama
then,
comes in.
right. So then the Elvis character dies in the shootout, which, like, for his first film, okay, drama.
I know. Poor guy.
So
I'm just
some of
gonna
the
say all the
main
Elvis fans had been really upset about that one.
they were they were. That's why at the end of the movie they add in the little ghost Elvis singing
Mhm.
"Left Me Tender" because they were like, he dies at the end, and then the
No.
colonel was like,
Mm-mm.
Um, so some of the main themes in this, I was an English major, so I had to like look at some main
Include the
themes.
themes. What
Yeah,
lessons
so
are
we've
we
got,
learning?
well, it's all jealousy, sibling rivalry, but
Mhm.
also like sibling love, family drama. We've got the theme of sacrifice. The character of Clint struggles between his love for
Mhm.
Kathy and his loyalty to his family, and he dies at the
Yep.
end protecting his brother, even though he just shot him, but then he felt bad. And then just in general, the fallout of war. Heavy hitter
Yeah.
for his first movie, for sure.
Hmm. And I'm the history major, so I really did understand the Civil War era aspect of it. So
Yeah.
we tag team this one. So this is where I think the most girl paraphrasing comes into
Yeah,
play here. So
yeah.
talking a little bit about Elvis's character, Clint Reno, some of his character traits. So like kind of like Tessa was saying, Clint is defined by his loyalty, his self-sacrifice, and the emotional conflict of this entire film. And, not like an Elvis, not unlike Elvis at the time of the filming.
Hmm.
So,
I think he was very like
yeah.
naive because this was his first
Mhm.
film, and like he, I think, could be defined by loyalty, self-sacrifice, and emotional
Yeah.
conflict. So a lot of them, the characters that he plays, we see that they're very similar to Elvis, or they become
They
him,
become
and
one
yeah, which
almost.
but then it's not even actually who he is. Anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But so I wrote about Clint that he's a loyal
Mhm.
younger brother who is
Yep.
selfless by staying home to take care of the mother. But then he married his brother's Pookie, so like that didn't really work out. He was trying to be selfless and take care of the family, but then he
Mhm.
married his brother's Pookie. So like, you know, I get
Yeah.
it. But
You get
then
it.
yeah, but then his love for Kathy makes him sort of like hashtag torn. Because he feels like,
Mhm.
sorry to my brother, I thought he was
Yeah.
dead. I married your girl, sorry, I thought you were dead, but I love her.
Uh-huh.
And then I kind of felt a little bit like Kathy was playing them both.
Oh, she
Like,
definitely was.
yeah.
Showing up, it's like the whole episode, like the scene where I think they're at like a fair, there's some kind of local event, raising money for the school. I think that's what it was.
Mhm.
And, Kathy's there and she's all happy and smiling because she sees Clint, up on stage, he's singing and, shaking his hips. And then we got Vance walking by and then they
Mhm.
make eye contact. And then she's off strolling with Vance, leaving Clint
Right.
behind.
Right. And Clint is like hashtag an insecure younger brother. And
Yeah.
so when his brother comes back from fighting in the war, he
Hmm.
already was a little bit feeling like, man, I have to stay home and take care of our mom. And like
Yeah. He was being the
my
younger sibling.
brothers, yeah, my brothers were like big and macho. So at least he got to marry, this girl, but then Miss
Hmm.
Girl still loves his brother. So
Yeah.
I don't
It's a
know. He's
lose-lose
very much the
situation.
peacemaker. He's like a peacemaker in this
Hmm.
family, even though then he shoots his brother.
I
So
always
maybe
kept
that's
feeling like
not,
he was trying to live up to like his older brothers, like they were his role model and he was trying to embody that.
yeah. And he is like a tragic hero in the movie.
Hmm.
Kind of
Yeah,
aside from like marrying his brother's girl, and like to be fair, he thought his brother was dead. So like
to be fair.
he didn't really do that much wrong until he
The
tries
end.
to shoot his brother over Kathy, and then he dies. So like, okay, drama.
Yeah. And then again, sob session at his grave, Ghost Elvis.
Ghost Elvis singing Love Me
I know.
Tender.
Which can I point out? I almost like the end version, like the ending credit version of Let Me Tender versus like the intro part of it.
Mm.
I don't know why. There's something different about it. I
Well,
just love
and
it.
the
I think the
tune is
words
a
are slightly
civil.
different.
They are, and then the tune is a Civil War tune.
Mhm.
Originally, it's called I think Lee. It was a like
Okay.
tune, and then they changed the lyrics to make it like for the movie.
Cool.
So I don't know.
Interesting.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about some like behind the scenes
Yeah.
stuff of what was going on actually in Elvis's life
Mhm.
during the filming of this movie. And one of the books I got a decent amount of stuff from, and like different people talking about it, was Alana Nash's book, Elvis and the Memphis Mafia. And she kind of writes at the beginning of the chapter about making movies and Love Me Tender. She writes, quote, when advance copies for the single of Love Me Tender rolled in at more than 1 million copies, the film itself was retitled, and the producer added 3 more to take advantage of the singer's popularity. Elvis, dubbed a howling hillbilly by Life magazine, was inconsolable. The movie made back its cost within 3 days, which told Wallace that Elvis could carry a picture as long as he toted a guitar, which is something we talked about because I
Yeah.
was like, I don't remember there being so many songs. And you're like, there
Mhm.
were 4.
Yeah, there were
And
four.
I was like, which I guess for like
Which
later
it
Elvis movies is not that
that's
many, but
no, it's not.
the only one I
Yeah.
remembered was Love Me Tender. I kind of felt like he didn't sing in it. So then anytime he did sing, I was like,
Hmm.
dang, they just really were like,
You were shockingly
sing us.
surprised.
I was like, why are you
Yeah.
singing?
And also, I like to point out it's like the way the songs were worked into this film so much better than you see in the future
Yes.
films because at least it made sense. Like, why are you singing? Oh, because you're at this, fundraiser event for a school, or you and your family are just sitting on the porch, or it's
Yeah.
you're a ghost and you're just singing, apparently. But it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but so Elvis going to Hollywood, changing gears a little bit. I found this quite interesting reading through some of our notes. So Billy Smith says when Elvis first went to Hollywood, he was green as a gourd. I don't think he'd ever been in a class play, so he was uncomfortable being around co-stars. It's obvious in Elvis's Love Me Tender that he overreacted, but he didn't have much direction, and he was distracted a lot because he fell in love with Deborah Paget. Not the whole falling in love with Deborah Paget, that didn't surprise me, but the thought that this man who gets up on stage in front of thousands of people, was green as a gourd in Hollywood, surrounded
Yeah.
by, other people.
I
I'm
feel like it
gonna,
kind of makes sense because in a way, like when he was on stage, he
mhm,
had a guitar in front of him and he
true.
he wasn't acting a part. I think he was genuinely just that
Hmm.
person, like that. just do the wiggle, like, and he's like, what? And
Yeah.
he like hammed up his own personality and like the
Hmm.
movements that he would have moved anyway, I think, but then it like he realized, oh, if I move like this,
Yeah.
it gets a reaction. So he hammed it up, but it
Hmm.
wasn't all that different from himself. But he was around all these people in Hollywood who were so different from himself, different, they weren't from the South, they
Hmm.
weren't born in a shack. Like he
Yeah.
didn't know any of these people, and also he didn't know about like acting. And
Hmm.
acting, it's almost easier to act when you're singing, and even then it's kind of difficult, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But apparently he was kind of Elvis behind the scenes. Marty Lacker says in the same Alana Nash book that he says, quote, on those first two movies, Elvis stayed at the Hollywood Knickerbocker. His parents went too. Elvis rented the whole 11th floor. He'd sit up there and write his name in lighter fluid on the glass top table and then set it on fire and watch it blaze. Okay,
That's a,
crazy
I
antics.
know. That's an Elvis move right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is like I feel like the biggest behind the scenes look that we get, and it was an interview that Elvis did on August 28th in 1956, talking a little bit about his greatest ambitions. And now Tessa, it's a long
Mm-hmm.
thing. Do we want to break this up for everybody?
Yeah, let's break it up a little
Okay.
bit.
All right.
You
So,
want me to go?
I
Okay.
can start. That's okay.
Sure.
So talking about a little bit about his ambitions, um, he's talking about, you know, he always wanted to be an actor. I mean, he's quoted saying, "It's all my life I've wanted to be an actor, though I never was in any school plays or recited a line other than the Gettysburg Address for my sixth grade homeroom class. But always sticking in the back of my head was the idea that somehow, someday, I'd like to get that chance to act."
And then he goes on
And
to
mhm,
say, I came out to Hollywood almost 3 months ago, and Mr. Hal Wallace of Paramount Pictures asked me to take a screen test. I went in to take the test, and Mr. Wallace told me to just act like myself. I studied up on what they wanted me to do, and then before I knew it, I was in front of the camera. I wonder if you can ever know what it's like to be standing in a movie soundstage and hear a bell ring and people shout quiet, and then all of a sudden realize that everyone is watching you and you're supposed to be acting out a part. I'll tell you, it's enough to make your legs slide out from under you.
which is, I guess, where he was getting at not feeling so comfortable around his
Yeah.
co-stars.
Right.
Yep. But I don't know. I think other people might notice it. Elvis, I feel like, did have, if you see interviews of him, see him on movies, he did have a little bit of a stutter. And so he
Mm-hmm.
said, whenever I get excited, I stutter a little bit. I have a hard time saying when or where or any words that start with W or I. Well, I can tell you I really had a hard time with the W's and I's that day. I'd like to know
Well,
what day or maybe what scene that they were filming.
I guess if it's his first day and like the screen test and he's nervous, I
Mhm.
think that's what he's talking about is doing the screen
Okay.
test and being
Yeah.
nervous and like, man.
Mhm.
And then he says, quote, when the test was over, I thought I'd been awful, but Mr. Wallace came up to me and he told me that things like my missing letters of some words is actually good in acting. It makes the performance more natural. I kind of smiled and
Mhm.
thanked him, but you can bet I didn't say a thing about not missing those letters on purpose. If that was natural, what I'd done, and they were satisfied with it, then it was great by me. And it was a real relief, too. My screen test was over. I'd gone through the first step of realizing my life's ambition. I just get sad when I think of like how badly he wanted to
Yeah.
be an actor and like a good
Mhm.
actor. And this is kind of like, it's not the sad part yet about it. These first four movies are pretty good.
Yeah.
But that the sincerity of wanting to be an actor and wanting to be a good actor. It's
Mhm.
interesting that it wasn't just like, oh, I just want to be really good at singing, even though he did want that. It's like
Yep. Well, I mean, he
also
grew up,
acting.
he was like an usher at the local movie theater. So he always talks about watching all these movies, studying these different actors. And so, like, from a young age, I guess if you're seeing that these are your idols, this is something that you really want to achieve sometime in your life. Also, just like the thought of like the other films that he had later in life falling through, that doesn't make it a whole lot better.
So then in the Peter Guralnick has like a huge coffee
Mm.
table book,
Yeah.
Peter Guralnick and Ernst Jorgensen, and it's called Elvis Day by Day, and it literally goes through like every day of his life that they have something to say. So these were I got a couple little things from there about behind the scenes stuff. So on the 10th of September 1956, during filming, Elvis
Mhm.
had a date with Natalie Wood, and then I liked this one on the 23rd of September, 1956. This is the quote from the book. Using the name of Clint Reno, the character he's playing in Love Me Tender, Elvis flies back to Memphis. I like that.
It's really cool.
I know. And what was interesting from that is that filming only lasted like a month. So I
Mhm.
looked at the filming dates and it was the 22nd of August, 1956 to the 21st of September, 1956. So like less than a month.
Yeah, they made movies much faster than they do today.
So fast.
Yeah. Right. And then the last thing that we want to do is kind of give you guys a look into the past and see how the movie was received by the audience. So a lot of these are coming from um, newspaper articles back in the day, but the first one we have is from Last Train to Memphis. Peter Gronick is quoted as saying, afterward, they went to a private screening of a rough cut of Love Me Tender. Everyone thought it was wonderful except for Elvis. When June tried to tell him how good he was, he made it clear that he did not want to be just good. And June is June Waniko. Of course, every Elvis fan knows about her. Mhm.
So, but I think that's interesting too. Just this, like, from his first movie, that he had this desire
Mhm.
to like be not just a good actor, but like an excellent
Yeah.
actor,
Yeah,
and that he critiqued his own performance so much.
exactly.
And like fair enough, because when we look at some of the reviews, so this one is from
Hmm.
Variety magazine, from December 31st, 1956, and it says, quote, appraising Presley as an actor, he ain't. Not that it makes much difference. There are four songs and lots of Presley wriggles thrown in for good measure. Like,
Hmm.
okay, mean.
I know. I mean, some of these are like a good mix of,
Yeah.
good, bad. The Post Standard from Syracuse, New York, from November 21st, 1956. They say about the movie, in a post-Civil War melodrama that generates enough excitement for opera fans, Elvis Presley makes his debut as an actor, and he becomes through with flying colors, doing what comes naturally. This may be a fine compliment to his director as well as a good co-stars as Richard Egan and Deborah Paget. They register the finer emotions while Elvis looks sullen or becomes violently jealous. I feel like
And
that's a good
then here,
compliment to the acting.
yeah, it was good. It
Yeah.
was like it's natural, whatever.
Hmm.
And then this next one is from the Casper Morning Star out of Wyoming. And it says, quote, the big movie news today is that the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, is also a fine Hollywood acting discovery. This fact, my cat feeder, this fact was borne out Thursday as at the American Theater where a capacity crowd assembled for the initial offering of 20th Century Fox's CinemaScope production, Love Me Tender.
Yeah. And then the last one we have from a newspaper article is the Philadelphia Inquirer from November 22nd, 1956, saying, sleepy-eyed Elvis Presley, complete with sideburns, ducktail hairdo, songs, guitar, and swiveling hips, made his big screen debut yesterday morning at the Fox and nearly blew the roof off. That is, his young admirers did. So you know those fans were excited.
Yeah. And then these are a couple from the Elvis Day by Day book, just kind of showing
Mhm.
like the aftermath of the movie. And so on the 15th of November, 1956, Love Me Tender opened
Mhm.
in New York City. And in this book, it says, quote, 1,500 fans began lining up the night before under the 40-foot cutout of Elvis. Reviews are generally critical, if not condescending. The Colonel's one piece of advice is to be sure to empty the house after every matinee showing to get people to go
Mhm.
back in and pay again.
Yep.
Um, and then a little bit later, on the 20th of November, in the book, it says, quote, Gladys Presley cries when the character her son plays dies in the picture. Sad.
I
And
know.
then for the 21st of November, it says, in Memphis, it breaks all records and Variety will report its first week earnings of $540,000. I didn't do my inflation calculator on that, but I should have because that has got to be a crazy
It's got to be
number.
a lot, and
Yeah,
especially for movies back then that cost hardly anything to make. That's got
right.
to be some good profits. Okay. So that wraps up Love Me Tender. And next we're
Hmm.
going on to Loving You, which came out July 10th, 1957. And this was like Elvis's first movie where he is the star. He was more
Hmm.
supporting in Love Me Tender, but this time he is the star. And this one was directed by Hal Kankner. It was produced and distributed by the Hal Wallace Production and Paramount Pictures Corporation. It was also known as Running Wild, Something for the Girls, Stranger in Town, and The Lonesome Cowboy. And it was actually based off A Call from Mitch Miller, which is written by Mary Agnes Thompson. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. And
Hmm.
cast included Elizabeth Scott, Wendell Corey, Dolores Hart, and James Gleason, and a couple others.
Yeah, I like this one.
I do too.
So the log line is, quote, Elvis Presley plays Deke Rivers, a gas station attendant who is discovered by publicist Glenda Markle, played by Elizabeth Scott, and
Mhm.
country western musician Tex Warner, Wendell Corey, who want to promote the talented newcomer to fame and fortune. And then I liked this description is from Elvis's cousin Gene Smith's book, Elvis's Van Friday. And he says, quote, the script was pretty much Elvis's story, a rags to riches movie, and the first in a long line of such movie scripts that were loosely based on Elvis's struggle, which would be told over and over again from different angles and yet never be told. Elvis played a character named Deke Rivers, a big singing talent who was working as an errand boy in a podunk that was too small and too obscure for an entertainment personality like Deke, Elvis.
Pretty much. And so
Yeah.
that's like our first note of this is so the play, not the play, a movie, is based around this guy, Deke Rivers, and he plays a delivery boy. Again, this is Elvis's character in a
Mhm.
small Texas town who, again, shocker, has a great talent for singing.
But And then he meets this manager who's like pretty, and she's got this like husky, raspy voice. And her name is Glenda Markle. And she
Mhm.
sees that he is musically talented and gets
Mhm.
him to join Tex Warner's country band.
Yep.
And then Glenda manipulates the media to increase his fame, which reminds me of someone, and tries to pass, Deke off as like a gimmick act. Tries to pass him off as like a local, and Glenda stirs an uproar between young girls and older women. She causes the drama.
Oh,
Um,
yes. She gave the generational
yeah,
feud, if you will.
yeah.
And then, so again, this is all going to sound maybe a little bit familiar to real life Elvis.
Mhm.
So, Dee goes on tour with the guys, Texas band, and, a little relationship with another singer. He starts a relationship with another singer, Susan Jessup, that is played by Dolores Hart.
Mhm. And then, okay, drama alert. Glenda and Tex used to be lovers.
Hmm.
Okay, tension.
Yeah,
Um, And then it's giving like the whole Hank Snow, Louisiana
yeah.
hayride situation with
Hmm.
Elvis.
Yeah.
Very much so when he's going on this like country band tour, it's
Hmm.
like giving Louisiana hayride. So that was kind of interesting.
Interesting. But
Mhm.
throughout this, we learned that, Deke is actually homesick, even though he didn't really have a family. He never knew who they were. And we actually learn that Deke Rivers is not actually his real name. He took on a completely new identity.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't even really, I literally watched it yesterday and I don't remember why.
I don't remember why either. It was just something
I
thrown in
watched it
there.
yesterday.
Like
Yeah, it
something
was
it's like
like,
he really, I guess, never knew his family. So he's like, I'm just gonna be a new me. And he picked this name off of a headstone and said, that's me. I'm gonna take up like your personality, who your friends were, the end.
okay. And then he's supposed to do this big show, but then the show is canceled because of the publicity that like Miss Glenda
Hmm.
manufactured. And
Yep.
then she's kind of the villain for real.
It
Like
kind of is. She was the one stirring the pot the whole
she
movie.
yeah, she manipulates Deke and then signs him to a contract that gives her half his earnings. Like, okay, Colonel. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
And then afterwards, once Steve learns about Glinda's manipulation, and he's like, okay, girl, I'm done. He skedaddles, you know,
Hmm.
but eventually, Glinda chases him down. She gets in her car, he's in his car, he chases, she chases him, gets him, and they return back to where they are actually televising one of his performances so the country can see what a stand-up gentleman he is.
And he's wearing jeans, which Elvis
You know,
never wear
actually,
jeans.
it's more like a
Um,
Canadian tuxedo, I guess you could
yeah,
say.
it's a jean suit.
Mm-hmm.
But yay, happy ending.
Woo.
Deke performs Loving You on stage, and he ends the film on a positive note with Miss Susan by his side.
Mm-hmm.
And then even better, Deke offers to let Tex and Glenda, who are like now back together, I guess, um, he offers to let them manage him, and he begins a new
Mm-hmm.
chapter in his career and personal life. But like, did you learn nothing from this experience?
You know,
Like she was manipulating you the whole time,
hmm.
and he's like, you know what, guys, you can still manage me.
You
It's
apologize.
it's giving the Colonel.
It is all
Oh
throughout the
man.
movie.
Hmm.
Okay. And
So
then
it's
as for our, did you have something to add, Tessa?
no, just the main themes of like
Okay,
crisis,
good.
fame, coming
Yeah,
from nothing and making it big, being manipulated. It's all just giving
it's
Elvis.
correct. It's basically Elvis's story. I wonder if he realized that maybe then towards the end of his life,
Yeah, I want to
looking
know.
back, maybe not.
Um,
We'll never know. But as for Deke Rivers, Elvis's character, his character traits, um, a lot of this is Tessa's girl paraphrasing here. Um, it's literally, as she likes to say, giving Elvis.
literally.
I don't know how I didn't notice this before. Um, it's foreshadowing there. I'm glad Tessa is now noticing for the first time.
No, well, I don't know. To be fair, I watched these movies like one
Hmm.
time, two and a
Okay.
half years ago. Like all of these ones,
Wow.
apart from King Creole, I have not
Hmm.
rewatched. I watched them once and I had COVID when I watched them. It was right after I saw the Elvis
They
movie.
all run
So
together
like I think I
eventually.
didn't I didn't know as much, but
Mm.
now I'm like, oh, this is his story.
Yeah. Oh, and
You
when I said
know,
it's like Louisiana hayride drama, it's like Glenda's like the
yeah,
Colonel, Elvis, Deke
yeah.
Rivers, and then Tex is like Hank Snow. And it's just that
Hmm.
weird relationship.
Dynamic.
Yeah, the
Um,
dynamic.
And then Deke's character is talented and
Hmm.
charming, reminds
Of
me of someone.
course. Yeah.
He's a natural singer with a raw talent, and he is like very rizzy, which makes him popular with the ladies. I
Hmm.
said, I said, literally, okay, real life.
Yes, those are Tessa's words. Um, And also, we learned that Deke, this dude, he is so naive and
Mhm.
trusting, much like Elvis was. He doesn't really know anything about the entertainment industry. He just like stumbles upon this stuff. And so
I'm
he's
reading what I
gullible.
wrote next, and it's
Yeah. Please read this one for us.
so it's we're saying he's
These are
naive and
Tessa's words.
trusting, and then I said literally the Colonel. I was kind of shook watching this and how obvious the connection is, even though Tommy wasn't as like obnoxious yet, but in hindsight it's kind of crazy.
For anybody who is curious, Tommy is Colonel Tom Parker that Tessa is affectionately nicknaming Tommy.
Affectionate, no,
Yeah, okay.
demeaning.
Demeaning. Why don't you just call him Tommy Boy then? I mean,
Then I
oh
said
goodness.
Deke Rivers stays trusting these people even though they literally manipulated him.
And that's all because, Deacon's, he's just a down to earth, humble
Hmm.
guy. He
Hmm.
never really thought he had this talent till somebody's like, I'm gonna make you a star.
I'm just laughing at my own notes for this
I
because
know.
it's funny. I said he's also a
Continue.
lover boy. He's a lover boy.
Mm-hmm.
He and Susan are kind of cutie together.
Yeah, they are.
And then this one I said he's also conflict avoidant, like okay me. I said He doesn't want to have any confrontation, even when he realizes
Mhm.
they're using him. Damn.
Yep. Mhm.
Familiar.
Familiar.
Funny.
But eventually he learns to separate the fame he's been given from his true desires and values, especially when he reconnects with Susan and begins to take ownership over his own career. Which, I mean, I
Oh,
guess I could say you could kind of say that about like, once you get past, I feel like the movie phase of Elvis's career,
yeah.
like 68 and maybe like onward, then it starts to reflect that.
You know, I love
Yes.
68.
Yeah, we know you do.
So here's just a little behind the scenes stuff.
Hmm.
So from Alana Nash's Elvis and the Memphis Mafia, Billy Smith talks about how Elvis, he says, quote, right after Love Me Tender, Elvis made the most dramatic change in his looks. That's when he realized that what makeup and color could do. For Loving You, he dyed his hair black like his mama colored hers. And then Billy Smith also says,
Hmm.
quote, before his second movie, Loving You, went into production. Oh, no, this is from Alana Nash's words, not Billy's words. Sorry. Before his second movie, Loving You, went into production, the
Hmm.
star met with writer director Hal Cantor and immediately got to the point. He said, do I have to smile very much in the picture? Cantor recalls. He said, I've been watching Bogart and Dean and Brando, and they don't smile very much. I don't want to do that either. If I don't smile, I'm going to get them. But since Loving You was written around Elvis's perceived persona, a country boy finds overnight success in the music business, he had little choice.
Hmm. And then, so that's more like on the movie set. But, while the filming was going down, Billy Smith says, when he was making Loving You, he almost walked out the 11th floor window of the Beverly Wilshire. He got up one night and the window was open and Jean caught him just in time.
Which then I was
Those,
like looking for when Gene says this in his
mm,
book. And okay, I swear he did say it, but I just couldn't find it for whatever reason. So
mm,
if anyone knows what page it's on, please let me know
tell
because
us.
I
Or if
couldn't find
there's
it.
any other reference of when we believe they got kicked
Yeah.
out of the Knickerbocker and then they went to the Beverly Wilshire. So if anybody
Yes.
knows that date or anything like
Yeah.
that, let us know. But
Um,
a little bit of a fun fact here.
mhm.
Gladys and Vernon were actually extras in the movie, as is Gene Smith and Scotty Moore and Bill Black. They appeared with him in the band. And apparently, after Gladys died, Elvis actually refused. He just couldn't watch this movie anymore because obviously he would see his mother in one of the crowds.
Which also then I saw something else that was like, I doubt he watched any of his movies. So then I was
I
like, that's
I
so
feel like he
true.
probably watched them when they came out, like initially, like
I
the
mean, like
premiere,
after,
and
yeah.
maybe, yeah, and maybe like I feel like if any, he saw like King Creole or something.
Yeah. And then these are just a little more behind the scenes stuff that was going on from the Elvis Day by Day book. So in January 1957, Vernon shipped his Cadillac Eldorado Seville by train because Elvis just couldn't have any regular car. He
No.
needed his fancy car. But then also when recording the soundtrack, Elvis didn't like recording it on the large sound stage. And in the day by day book, it says it took 11 hours and he still did not achieve a satisfactory take. Like he hated recording
Hmm.
on the sound stage.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was a little bit like of a sad one, which was the 27th of January, 1957. Gladys was admitted to Baptist Hospital for tests. And then they didn't say what the tests were for, but that, like, I guess she wasn't feeling well. And then she was released on the 8th of February. Um,
Yep.
yeah.
And then for every day of filming, the studio actually received 500 calls and 2,000 letters from fans. On
Mhm.
a more upbeat note,
Yeah.
for the fans to figure out where he was, though, every time.
I know. They didn't have the internet.
I know.
Crazy.
And then Elvis arrived at the studio at 8 a.m. and wouldn't leave till 7 p.m. because he was not singing. Well, he was, but he was signing autographs and taking pictures with fans at the gates. And, got so hectic that they actually had to bring in 6 extra security guards when Elvis wanted to leave.
Yeah.
She was popular.
Then The filming of this one was pretty quick too.
Mhm.
It was from January 21st to March 8th, 1957.
Mhm. So
Um,
everything taking
and
about like a month long.
yeah. Um, and now just a little bit about the reception of,
Mhm.
how did people receive Loving
Yep.
You?
One of my favorite quotes that I got from a newspaper article was from the Pittsburgh Sun Telegraph from Pennsylvania, obviously, from August 8th, 1957. They say, there's this much to say about Elvis Presley's second movie. It's far superior to his debut in Love Me Tender. This is hardly a film for a critic to praise, for Loving You is geared at right to the teenagers. Thus, anyone who blasts its silly, immature plot is nothing but an old meanie.
It's
So
funny.
true.
And then this is from the Daily News out of New York.
Mhm.
They said, Hal Wallace is presenting Elvis in his second film has taken no chances in utilizing the services of the teenage idol. Loving You on view at the Brooklyn Paramount Theater is a tailor-made job, familiar, safe, and strainless for the leg-pumping singer. It is also dull. Let's face it, for the gyrating one's many fans, the Paramount film was a feast. And no wonder, since Elvis plays Elvis in the role of a small town boy propelled to the big time by a unique singing style amid a current musical craze. Presley's pouting, babyish, sensual face that breaks out into an engaging smile is very much in evidence. So are his repeated bumps and grinds. Also, the
Mhm.
soundtrack is filled with scads of his songs, including Hot Dog, Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, and Got a Lot of Living to Do. To be precise, Loving You has a plot, but it sadly relishes the old overnight success routine. In this case, a displaced fairy tale running pat and obvious.
Mhm.
Presley is enthusiastic, not a bit self conscious, and shows potential acting ability.
You know what's his second, movie, first starring role? I
Yeah,
give them
I
credit.
liked it.
I did too.
It's kind of
Me and
like,
Tessa were messaging about certain songs. I
yeah.
don't get a whole lot of love. I guess we were talking about like his performance of Lonesome Cowboy in the film.
Mhm.
Mhm. Okay.
But despite some of these reviews that are kind of like lukewarm. In the
Yeah.
Elvis Day by Day book, it says that on the 30th of July, 1957,
Mm.
it writes, Loving You opens nationwide. The picture will appear on Variety's national box office survey for 4 weeks, peaking at number 7. So clearly, some people still liked it.
Girlies loved it.
It was for the girls.
It was for the
And
girls.
I would say it still is.
It is.
But interestingly, this is the first of his 4 movies
Mhm.
that is in color. So that's
Yeah.
kind of cool too. It's the only
Mhm.
one of the first four.
Only one. So moving on, we got our third picture or motion picture. We're going old timey here.
Mm.
Is Jailhouse Rock, which was
Mhm.
released November 8th, 1957. So we just missed the anniversary of that one. But it was directed
Mhm.
by Richard Thorpe. It was produced and distributed by Avon Productions and then MGM and
Mhm.
Lowe's Incorporated, which I
Mhm.
didn't realize that they were involved. The cast included Judy Tyler and Mickey Shaughnessy. Those were just kind of some of the bigger ones, but also there are several others included in the cast.
And then, guys, guess what? It's another movie
Mhm.
where Elvis kind of plays Elvis.
Yep,
The log line was after learning to play the guitar in prison, a young man becomes a rock and roll sensation.
yep.
Um, and Alana Nash says in the Elvis and the Memphis
Hmm.
Mafia book, like Loving You, Elvis's third picture, Jailhouse Rock, was a semi-autobiographical story, chosen purely as Presley product to sell tickets and records and not to build his profile as an actor, even as Elvis worked on his technique to make sure it did. The Colonel wrangled $250,000 plus a piece of the profits from MGM for Elvis's time.
Crazy. I'm sorry. This was also, I feel like, the start of them realizing what storylines start to sell. So,
Yeah.
but talking a little bit about that storyline. So, Elvis plays the role of Vince Everett, a construction worker who was sentenced to 10 to 14 months in prison for accidentally killing a man during a drunken brawl, which I feel
Oh,
like is very little time served for something like that. I'm not gonna lie.
It was an accident. He didn't mean to.
I mean,
He's a good
technically,
guy.
wouldn't that be like involuntary manslaughter?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. And he
But
only
he's a
served
good
10 to
guy.
14 months. But he is a good guy. He had the good
But wasn't,
looks.
no,
The
I think
women
he
wanted
killed
him out.
I think he killed the guy or beat the guy up because he was like saying something to a lady
He
or
was like
something.
heckling or something, I think.
Yeah, he was like
He
being rude
knocked him
to a
out.
woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the jukebox. Okay, so maybe he got the sentence cut down.
Oh,
Anywho.
yeah.
Yeah.
But guys, guess what? Lucky coincidence. He
Mm-hmm.
shares a cell with this guy named Hunk, who
Mm-hmm.
used to be a country singer and then teaches him how to play the guitar. And
Yep.
then this is so cool. They have an inmate talent show, which like I didn't know they had those. The
No way.
inmate talent show is broadcast on national television, and Vince
Mm-hmm.
performs and becomes an overnight sensation. And he sings "I Want to Be Free," and I just think that's kind of funny. And it's
Yep.
like those, you know, nowadays when they have those online things of like you can write to like people in prison,
Yes.
like dating someone in
Mm-hmm.
prison. It's
Yep.
giving the same thing to me,
Same thing.
but I kind of feel like I was sleeping on this movie. I watched it one time and then I was like,
I think
it's so
because
cute.
it is like I feel like an Elvis classic. Sometimes I think it
Hmm.
gets like brushed
I
aside. It's
have
like,
it.
oh,
Like
okay.
I have that little thing
Oh, there
over
you
there.
go.
Yeah.
I see him. I see him in the corner.
Hmm.
Um, but so after this little inmate talent show gets televised and you got all that fan mail trickling in, Hunk, in Tessa's words, is hashtag jealous, and he ends up hiding Vance's fan mail for him not to
Hmm.
see. So,
And then
mm,
when Vince, gets out of jail, he goes to this place and he had been told he could work as like a singer. And then the guy's like, oh no, but you can be our bar boy. So then he's come mad. And
mm,
then he breaks a guitar and he's just kind of hot headed. And
yep,
after a little impromptu performance, he meets Peggy Van Alden, who is played by Judy Tyler. And guys, she's a promoter. That is
of course she
such a
is.
lucky coincidence.
Hmm.
And then Vince and Peggy start their own record label, and Vince
Hmm.
records a new song, but it's rejected by every
Yep.
label until Peggy's friend plays it on the air, making it a hit. So the
Yeah.
music was also stolen at some point. I don't know. I
Hmm.
like,
Well, like he tried to take it to, I think, one of the record labels that Peggy had a connection with. And they're like, no, 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 we don't do any of that kind of rock and roll
oh yeah.
stuff. So then they're like, okay, well, we're just gonna, produce it ourselves. We're just gonna make our own record label.
But
And
then also
that's,
someone else stole the demo, right?
yeah, I think the demo got stuck with the person who rejected it because they probably secretly like, no, this is what do they call it? A bop. It is a bop.
Yeah.
And I'm not old. And so then they're like, okay, we're going to produce this ourselves and beat them to the punch and release it. The end.
And then, so then Vince becomes famous. He's got the world at his feet, and he kind of becomes a dick. He distances himself from Peggy, and then the DJ who had played his
Yeah.
record is trying to date Peggy, and
Yeah.
Vincent is mad, like he has some kind of claim to
Hmm.
Peggy, even
He called
though
her
he rejected
sexy.
her. That was a nice scene, but even though he
I
rejected
like to
her,
say I'm surprised that with all the like the restrictions in the 1950s that they
I
were allowed to
know.
say that word. Um,
I was
just saying.
But and then he signs a movie deal and he has to do this movie with this conceited actress. And I wrote, she falls in love with him after kissing him once. She's real. Because she's like being a bitch to him kind of and like ignoring him.
Mm,
And then they do a kissing scene. And
yep.
then she's like,
Oh.
oh.
Ooh.
So he's Rizzy too, another Rizzy character
Mhm.
played by Elvis.
Yeah. But so yeah, after the whole movie deal, also why this is all going on, Punk is released from jail, meets back up with Vince, and they're kind of working together. He's kind of Vince's assistant. And I guess, all the fame got to Vince's head. He became like very arrogant about it, and Hunk was not having it. So he punched him in the throat. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the last couple minutes of the movie. and messes up his vocal cords. Obviously, when you're a singer, that's crucial. But don't worry, he proves to be okay. He's okay in the end, and he ends up singing to Peggy. Yay, he changes his ways in Tessa's words. And he sings
uh,
Young and Beautiful to
yes.
Peggy. Yes.
And he's like all nervous, like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
will I be able to sing? Like,
Yep.
it's kind of, which also when we get to the behind the scenes, what was going on, I think it's kind of interesting that in the
More
movie,
like parallels
he's like,
reality.
yeah, his larynx, and well, it was like his larynx got like busted, which
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know the
Anyhow,
whole thing of that.
we'll get
So
there.
some of our main
Hmm.
themes in the movie, we got the price of fame. I said price of fame for real. I said he becomes meanie and corrupt, even though he started as a literal prisoner. So I don't
Hmm.
know. He didn't really have it going for him low key from the start. But
Oh
don't worry,
no.
he has a redemption arc. He gets back with Peggy, and it's all good in the
Mhm.
end. Even though he was punched by Hunk, he can still sing. Don't stress.
Don't stress. It's a-okay. Obviously, also kind of going back to like the loving you theme, it's, he got the exploitation, the movie, not the movie, the music industry. Um, okay, art imitating life. Oh no. Okay, a lot of these notes, these are Tessa's words. So if you're ever wondering what it's like to have a text strand with Tessa, this is about what it is.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And then, of course, obviously, friendship and forgiveness, they
Mhm.
win the day.
Yay.
Yay.
Um, and then we have
Mhm.
character traits of Vince. I
Yep.
said, another Elvis kind of character. He's
Mhm.
impulsive. I said he's got a short temper, like literally went to jail because of his short temper. I said he's mad, unsophisticated. He just trusts so many people and learns the hard way.
Mhm.
Um, and then he's also driven and determined. He wants to make it big with music and does so kind of like at whatever cost. Um,
Yep. And but of course, he's just a little bit of he's arrogant.
mhm.
He's kind of egotistical for real. Once he becomes famous, he turns on the people who first believed in him, like Pecky. Um, Again, also another vulnerable, insecure man, just doesn't know his ropes yet. He's finding himself. He's also a little bit self-destructive. Again, we got that temper tantrums. He's misguided, his misguided decisions,
Mhm.
or his romantic mistakes, let him Peggy go
Mhm.
there. But in the end, he's also rebellious, which kind of wins the ladies over sometimes, like a bad boy. I'm just saying. Why else
50s
send
Elvis.
letters? Why
Yeah.
else send letters to a man in prison? Um,
Yeah.
because he
And
refuses to bow to that authority. He does his own thing.
and then the next, like the line in the movie that I wrote. So at one point,
Yes. I
Judy's
messaged this
like,
to you.
yeah, she's like,
Mhm.
those cheap tactics won't work with me. And he says, that ain't tactics, honey. That's just the beast in me. And I wrote, okay, period.
Yep. Oh my
I was having a
goodness.
moment watching
She
this movie.
was.
I was like,
I just
how
imagined
have I
Tessa
not
just like,
rewatched
oh.
it? I was like, that ain't tactics, honey. That's the beast in me. Okay. His
Oh
acting was
my
not that
goodness.
good, in my opinion, in that movie,
Mm.
but I
I think
didn't
he
really
definitely tried
care.
to take on more of like the Bogart kind of style character, which is like
Yeah.
no emotion, like no emotion equals more.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work for every role, obviously.
No. Um,
We'll get to some of the behind the scenes stuff.
uh-huh.
Some of the first things that we have are from Elvis and the Memphis Mafia. So Lamar is quoted saying, "One of the surprises of Jailhouse Rock was the flair Elvis showed for rock choreography in the big production number. When the filming was over, Elvis was really proud of what he'd done."
Yeah, and it's like one of the most iconic images of
Mhm.
Elvis is like
Yeah,
him in that Jailhouse Rock pose.
obviously
And
looking at Tessa's wall
yeah,
right
on my
there.
wall.
Yeah.
But like it makes sense
Mhm.
that he had been nervous before, like to
Yeah.
do a whole dance sequence.
Well, because
Um,
originally, like, they had the choreographer come in and like doing all these things, and I think it's in George Klein's book too, where
mhm.
he's with Elvis, and Elvis is like, "That ain't happening." Basically, it's
Right.
like, "No thanks." And the choreographer basically he watched all like this Elvis footage from any of his concerts that he could get his hands on. It's like, okay, I got something new for you.
Yeah, and he
So,
kind of
mm,
modeled it off of Elvis's performance
mm,
style. And then he was supposed to have his haircut, like at his actual haircut for the
yeah.
prisoner scenes where he has like short hair. But then
Mm,
apparently the fans like caught wind of the fact that he was gonna get his haircut and they like wrote to the production company and was like,
mm,
do not cut his beautiful hair.
don't do
And
it.
so they gave him a short hair wig, which to be honest, the wig looked pretty good. Like
I was gonna
I
say, like,
it didn't look super wig like,
no.
but apparently he had a couple wigs for the movie because his hair was different lengths.
Hmm.
Um, and now the biggest drama of the
Vegas, I
behind
know.
the scenes, Elvis had like a cap on his tooth and he inhaled it during the
Mm,
dancing sequence. Like he aspirated it and it got stuck in his lung.
yeah.
At first they thought he'd swallowed
Nice.
it, so they were like, "You'll be fine. It'll just do its thing."
Hmm.
But it actually became stuck in his lung. And on that Elvis Day by Day book, it says that that was May 14th, 1957, that happened.
Hmm. And, all there was a lot of Memphis Mafia guys there, so they were definitely there to document what was going down. Lamar said, the cap was lodged in his lung, and the doctors were afraid it would cause an abscess or pneumonia. So obviously had to get
Right.
that one out real quick.
And then Billy talks about how Gladys
Hmm.
and Elvis's connection, how like this was an instance where they heard about their connection. So Billy says,
Hmm.
quote, Aunt Gladys could always tell when something was wrong, especially with Elvis. Like when Elvis swallowed that tooth cap on Jailhouse Rock. She was in Memphis and he was in California, and she kept telling Vernon, something ain't right. I can feel it. It wasn't an hour later until she got the phone call.
Yep.
So,
And then I guess so if he, inhaled the lung on May 14th, um,
mhm,
I would say by day is saying that it wasn't removed from his lung until the next day. So this was
mhm.
not the most speedy process, I guess.
Well, because
Um,
they thought it was just like he had swallowed it, so then he had to go and
yeah.
have X-rays, and then they realized it was
He's
in his
like,
lung.
yeah, he's
And
like,
then
something's not right here.
what is really interesting is they had to go through his vocal folds to get to his. I was telling my singing teacher about this today to get to his
Yep.
lungs, and that there were like a bunch of different doctors who were like, I don't want to do that because they were just worried that they would like mess something up. Your vocal
Yeah.
folds are like teeny tiny itty bitty, and imagine you're like operating on the most
On
famous vocal
Elvis
folds in
Presley,
the country. And like if you mess up, like you've messed
you would
up his
have
career,
millions
his
of,
life.
no, you would have millions of screaming girls at your doorstep.
Right. So they had to
I
go and
mean,
get this tooth cap, but they had to pass his vocal folds. My hand would not have
yikes.
been steady.
Nope. Mm-mm.
Nope.
But
And that procedure is a bronchoscopy. Anyway.
yes, interesting. Also, on a side note, Ferdinand and Gladys actually moved into Graceland on the day that their son was getting that cap removed from his lung.
Mhm. Yep.
Hmm.
Very random.
Very random.
And on the
But
surgical topic,
yeah, the medical topic. Hmm.
so Elvis's friend George Klein, we can see him in one of the scenes.
Yeah.
It's so cute. When I watched it, I was like, George, because he looks so
Actually, it's
young.
during that
Like,
kissing scene, George is just there, like
yeah,
mouth
he's
open, just
like,
watching. Because, oh no.
um, but I was like, oh, he looks so cute and like young or whatever.
Hmm.
But during filming, Elvis paid for George to get a nose job. And like, because George had kept talking about like he hated his nose, he'd
Hmm.
broken his nose and it healed wrong. And Elvis was like, well, just I'll pay for you to get a nose job.
You be
Because
the guinea
also
pig.
Elvis then, yeah, Elvis got
Hmm.
a nose job, which like not a lot of people know. And it look, that doctor did a good job because
Hmm.
it is not super noticeable, but like it made such a good difference.
Yeah.
If you like, we were trying to figure it out before. We think it was like right
Hmm.
before King Creole. And but he like made his friend do it first to make sure that
Like,
the
you
surgeon
make
was
sure
gonna,
it comes out okay.
yeah. I mean,
Mm.
I feel like I would have done that maybe more for the vocal fold
Yeah.
situation, but fair enough,
Okay,
cosmetic
fair enough.
procedure.
Yeah. Um, Anyhow, moving on. So Elvis Day by Day says on May 28th, 1957, Elvis actually he bought his first grand piano for Graceland and he used it was a used white, please pronounce this. Is it
I
nave?
think
Maybe the
Knock,
music
nape, I don't know. I've never heard
maybe
of
is the
that
K
brand.
silent. We don't. Tessa's supposed to have this answer as somebody,
Right.
in the music realm. Um, it was bought from Jack Marshall, piano organs in Memphis for $795.
Yep. And then on the 12th of June, so still during filming,
Mm-hmm.
Elvis was gifted a wallaby,
Mm-hmm.
like a little tiny kangaroo,
Yep.
um, to by some people from Australia. And he, on the 12th of June,
Mm-hmm.
1957, had it shipped to the Memphis Zoo because he was like, I don't know what to do with this little wallaby. But I just thought it was funny that it was during the filming. Um, and so filming was May 13th to June 17th, 1957. Once again, a pretty quick turnaround. And sadly, actually, right after filming concluded, Judy Tyler, who was Elvis's co-star in the film, died in a motorcycle accident on July 3rd, 1957. So then it said that Elvis couldn't watch this movie now because he got sad when he thought of how she never got to see it.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I found, they post this right after her death. This is from the Oakland Tribune, so kind of like talking about the reception of the film. This article was actually written by Judy Tyler, and she said, Elvis isn't that far along yet, to be sure. Jailhouse Rock is only his third picture, but I believe it will be a turning point in his career. Now, that sounds funny, I know, considering the present peak of his popularity, but I do believe it will do much to establish him as an actor. Those who may have scoffed at him before will recognize some of these qualities I have been describing. I think it will show mature, both in his acting and his singing, that may have been overlooked previously. And I just feel like that's really sweet.
Yeah, apparently they
Like,
have like a good friendship
yeah,
between them. So it's sad that she died like before the
mm,
film even came out.
yeah,
And yeah. And then the New York Times says Elvis stays front and center, of course, muttering his lines sheepishly and wooing Miss Tyler
mm,
by collapsing like a rag doll and hooking a chin on her shoulder. And then they say the sound technicians must have closed it in, for this time most of his singing can actually be understood. And in two numbers, Treat Me Nice and the title song, done as a convict jamboree, Elvis breaks loose with his St. Vitus specialty 10 to 1. Next time he'll make it, finally getting those kneecaps turned inside out and cracking them together like coconuts. Never say die, El. It's like,
love it.
okay.
These reviews are all different. They're all crazy. The
Yeah.
San Francisco Examiner, October 31st, 1957, says, I like the kid. Frankly, I think Presley will turn into quite an actor and isn't going to happen tomorrow or next year, but it will happen.
Yeah.
They had faith.
Well, yeah. And then the Los Angeles Times on November 14th said, why popular teenage idol like Presley and the contemporary musical rage of rock and roll must be associated and identified with crime, greed, profanity, vulgarity, and brutality is beyond imagination. If screenwriter Guy Trosper, producer Pandro S. Berman, and MGM want to capitalize on the tremendous popularity of Presley, more power to them. If they want to wax rich on teenage dollars, none can object. However, it would seem to be wise to do something for the rock and rollers and not something to them. The kids flock to see and hear Presley sing, yet in this picture, the leading character plays a vicious, rude, and unpleasant individual.
And this was such a different take, I feel like, than all
Yeah.
the other movie reviews that you'd see. It's like somebody like, if you're gonna do a movie, do it to support the cause, I guess.
Yeah.
Just so
I feel like
weird.
it's I feel like it's like tongue in cheek. Like that's the point is they're
Hmm.
like, ah, he's a criminal. He must be a
Oh, how
criminal.
dare you?
Right. I felt like it was a
Hmm.
little tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
And then in Elvis Day by Day, it says for the 8th of November, 1957, Jailhouse Rock opens in theaters nationwide. It will appear for 3 weeks on Variety's National Box Office Survey, peaking at number 3, and will be the 14th most successful film of the year. By 1969, Variety will report its US and Canadian earnings to have reached $4 million, roughly comparable to those of The Wizard of Oz. Which I just thought that was
It's
interesting
crazy.
because, like, I know that people say there was another thing that ranked it as like one of the
Mm.
best musical moments in a movie was like the Jailhouse Rock dance scene that is like
Yeah. I mean, it's one of
iconic.
the most iconic, I think, dance scenes in movie history.
Yeah. Right. It's like interesting because I don't know, the story, it's not that it's bad. It's just that it's not
No,
like, I mean, it was good.
plot's not fully developed, or it's a simple plot.
Yeah. I'll watch it because Elvis is in it. I don't really
Of
care.
course. All right. But no, we have the last film of the 1950s, which
Hmm.
is King Creole, and that was released July 2nd of 1958. This is going down as probably one of Elvis's favorites, and
And
he says
mine.
so, and mine as well. It is directed by Michael Curtis. It is produced and distributed by How Wallace Productions and Paramount Picture Corporation. It is also known as A Stone for Danny Fisher, and Sing You Sinners, and is based on A Stone for Danny Fisher, which was written by Harold Robbins. The filming locations is, I think, the only film that actually was shot on location and was filmed
Mhm.
in New Orleans, Louisiana, and cast included people such as Carolyn Jones, Walter Matthau, and Dolores Hart. So this is the second movie that Dolores is in with Elvis.
Yeah. And Dolores was his lover in
Hmm.
Loving You. And
Yep.
then she's his sister in, right? Isn't she his sister? Or is she the other girl who's
Yes.
at the, yeah, she's not the sister. Who's the sister? I thought someone played the
Oh,
sister who had been a
we
love
can
interest
Google.
before. Okay,
Let's
I'll
see.
just keep talking.
You talk, I'll look.
The log line for this movie is a troubled youth singing sets New Orleans rocking with a sweet girl to love him and nightclubbers cheering. It seems he will shake off his past and head for the top. But will a mobster and his man trap mole snare him in a life of crime?
Also, Dolores was the love interest. She was Nellie.
Okay, and then she was also the love interest in Loving You.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct. All right.
okay.
So now we can really get into the plot rundown now that we set
Mhm.
those things straight.
Yeah.
So Elvis is playing 19-year-old Danny Fisher, who is a high school dropout. Well, he had to repeat high
Mhm.
school and he said, forget this. Um,
Mhm.
but he said basically forget this because he works to support his family, his struggling family in New Orleans after the death of his mother.
And then, because he's a good guy, he
Mhm.
rescues a woman, Ronnie, from her abusive boyfriend. But then this kind of leads him to the seedy underworld of New
Oh,
Orleans.
yes.
And he joins a local gang. And then, while working at a local nightclub, he gets offered a job as, you guessed it, a singer at the
Hmm.
King Creole Club.
Yep.
But then there's like a shady nightclub owner too.
Of course, there's always somebody shady, let's be quite honest. So, Danny and Ronnie, they're like in love, we guess. But then Maxie finds out, which is like Ronnie's, I don't want to say it, but I kind of want to do. It's like her pimp, I guess.
Yeah, it's like they
Yeah.
have this strange relationship.
Yeah,
She's kind of,
correct.
he's like abusive towards her, and he's a shady nightclub
Uh-huh.
owner.
Hmm.
And anyway,
Anyway, it's a weird dynamic. You'll have to
very
watch
weird.
it, of course. Yes. So whole Ronnie Maxie kind of situation. Maxie finds out about Danny and Ronnie and ends up shooting Ronnie. Of course, there's always some kind of shooting going on.
Some
And then
kind of
she ends
shooting.
up dying. So in Tessa's words again, hashtag justice for Ronnie.
Yeah, I kind of forgot she died. Like,
Hmm.
and then I was like, oh, this is depressing.
Yep.
And then at the end, Danny and his father had like tumultuous relationship, but at
Hmm.
the end, it all works out because Danny's dad goes to his show and he hears him sing "As Long as I Have
Yeah.
You." And I read
Which,
somewhere that
mhm,
or maybe it was just literally, I think, not read somewhere. I think I watched it today in that new
mhm,
documentary that came out about the 68 special.
yep.
Baz Luhrmann was saying that King Creole was originally done for James Dean. Um, so
It is like
that's
a
why,
James Dean-esque character. So I can see
yes.
that.
Yeah. So that was originally written like
Mhm.
for him with him in mind, which is kind of
Yep.
interesting when you like bear this movie in mind, I guess.
Which we also forgot about the whole like because Elvis, his character was like, with the shady, nightclub people that they
Mm-hmm.
also there was a moment where his dad was attacked in some kind of weird deal. So that's
Like a
also kind of why it was
blackmail.
like, yeah. That's part of the plot as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
Maxie is like trying to blackmail Danny
Hmm.
into singing for his club instead of like the nice guys King
Yep.
Creole club,
Correct.
by attacking his dad.
Which the nice guy was
Um,
kind of schmoozing the sister too.
yeah,
Yeah. It
it's
was all happening.
all happening.
Um, But some main themes we got going on here.
Mhm.
Obviously, no Elvis movie would be complete, at least the 1950s Elvis movie would be complete without the rebellious youth. Danny really struggles to find his place in the world. There's all these expectations from his family and society and even school about, exceeding in life and, gaining that independence. But ultimately, it just wasn't for him. So he ended up dropping out of school, joining a gang, and he ended up pursuing a career in singing, which, when his decisions, they all led him down some kind of dangerous path.
Mhm.
Not always the best
Um,
path.
no, we also have a big theme of like love and sacrifice, which we
Hmm.
saw in other movies as
Yep.
well. So despite Ronnie's troubled past, she and Danny share a strong bond, and their love becomes a source of hope and also tragedy because she dies. And then Ronnie, so she dies saving him in a way,
Hmm.
and her sacrifice for Danny underscores the theme of selfless love and the cost of being entangled in a world of crime and violence.
Oh, goodness. But then we also have
Mhm.
family responsibility, of course. So there's a lot of sense of responsibility from Danny towards his father, Mr. Fisher, and his sister, Mimi. See, Mimi's a different character. I don't remember who plays Mimi though.
No.
Um, And so there's a lot of struggle to support his family from Danny financially, while he also is wanting to try and to break into his music career. But he's also still facing like his father's disappointment. But they reconcile at the end. There's a whole lot going on.
So it's all good.
It's
And
all good.
then another big theme is crime and violence and the consequences. So I said violent confrontations with tragic consequences for real.
Yes.
And then once more reiterating RIP Ronnie. And
Hmm.
then but it's okay. There's a redemption arc
Yeah.
for all. So Danny has a way out of this shady world by
Hmm.
singing, and he takes responsibility for his actions. He reconciles with his dad, returns to the King Creole Club, and sings to Nellie, this girl she had a crush on him, and he kind of liked her, but he was like, "I'm
Yeah.
literally in a gang, and I can't deal right now." But then
Hmm.
it works out in the end. Don't worry, it's fine.
Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. Which also, I don't know, I gotta point out this movie before we get on to some of the character traits. This movie has a lot of my favorite movie music.
Mm-hmm.
There's one scene when he first meets Nellie and he's singing Lover Doll in like the sort of
It's like a candy, like
five
a
and
soda
10,
shop. Yeah,
five and
yeah,
10. Yeah, it's a 5 and 10. And I love that song. It's great.
yeah.
I love it. Oh my gosh, there was another one.
As long as I have you is so good.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank. We'll move on.
Trouble, all of
Trouble's a
them.
classic.
Crawfish. I mean,
Mm.
bangers. Um,
Anyhow, we'll
so,
talk some more about, I guess, the character traits now.
so some character traits of Danny Fisher. So he's pretty similar to Vince from
Mm.
Jailhouse Rock. He's rebellious, he's a high school dropout and he tries to fight his dad's like conventional desires for him and wants to be a singer. But he's also loyal and protective. I said he stands up for Ronnie and also takes care of his family, even though they're kind of hashtag haters.
Yeah.
Um, which like, yeah, they're kind of like, why do you want to sing? What the hell is that about? And he's like,
Mm.
I just want to. Um, he's also kind of hot headed in the same way Vince
Of
was,
course.
So
But he is also pretty self-sufficient. He's a very self-sufficient young man. He is the breadwinner for his family, even though he had some criminal pursuits there. And he
mhm.
fends for himself and defends others. Obviously, he defended Ronnie, sticking up for her. But he's also conflicted, vulnerable, also can kind of like the reflection of Elvis, real life Elvis, and the prior characters that he played. Throughout the film, Danny struggles with the pressures of responsibility. He is also, although he's tough, he feels guilty for wanting to leave his family and go out and do his own pursuits. Um, And then he also wants a better life, but also feels bad for wanting that. So, all kind of tying in, I do think that this
Yeah.
is another reflection of just Elvis in real life.
Yeah, I love this movie.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and then some behind the scenes
Hmm.
stuff. So a lot of us know, but Elvis was drafted to the army just before the
Hmm.
movie started production. And so he actually wrote on the 24th of December, 1957, in the Elvis Day by Day book,
Hmm.
it says, in a letter to the Memphis Draft Board, Elvis formally requests a deferment for the filming of his new Paramount motion picture, quote, so these folks will not lose so much money with all they've done so far. And then his deferment was approved just 3 days later. Um, he also read the book to prepare for the movie, so he was like really
Hmm.
into the character of it. And this was just a sweet little story. So while he was working on the movie, he actually met Marlon Brando, um, which is kind of cool. I liked that, he got to meet him in the studio commissary. I don't know. I thought it was fitting that it was during this film.
Especially it's one of the guys that he's always looked up to. I mean, he
Right.
mentions it in like the behind the scenes interview that we were talking about earlier. Um, but as you know, we're putting in our notes and looking through these things, there's actually not a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff. Um, and Elvis, what was going on during this time. And I don't know, did you put the filming dates for this one?
Yeah. So it's January 20th to March 10th, 1958.
Okay. So
So
also pretty short stuff going
like
on.
6 week kind of
Yeah.
period.
Hmm. But
And
go ahead.
yeah, just so on this website called Elvis History Blog, she writes that apparently um, the writer
Mhm.
Bob Thomas, who's the writer of the movie, like turned them a bunch of these Hollywood reporters away, and
Mhm.
one of them complained and said they put the lid on Elvis. And he said Hal Walls has been banning all interviews and set visitors
Mhm.
while Presley is making King Creole. The producer wants nothing to interfere with the film schedule since Elvis has a deadline to meet with Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
But then
Mm.
Wallace claims that it was not his decision to close the set, but that it
Yeah.
was the Colonel's decision. So,
I've always thought that because I mean,
mm-hmm.
Elvis never really did interviews. He didn't do
Mm-hmm.
commercials. It was if you're going to see Elvis, you're going to pay to see him at the movies. That's
Right.
it. And I feel like that was definitely the Colonel's tactic there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one thing that I really liked about the behind the scenes from King Creole is this cute little fact. It's a fun fact from Scotty Moore in his book Aboard the Mystery Train. And he's quoted saying, when filming began, we played the part of Elvis's movie band. This time, we were given a few lines to deliver. When Elvis sang King Creole, we stood behind him on stage. At one point during the song, Elvis pretended to play a guitar solo. He can be seen looking back over his shoulder at me, a sly grin on his face. That grin wasn't in the script, it was a private joke between us. With his eyes, he was asking me if he was doing his fingers correctly on the solo. When they wanted to shoot the close up of his hands, I put on Elvis's shirt and played the solo for the camera.
And so, just going back, so a little bit of the receptions of King Creole. So, from the Elvis and the Memphis Mafia book, it says King Creole was fairly daggone good. So, Billy Smith says this. That was his best movie, I think. He thought so too. If he'd been allowed to carry on with more dramatic pictures like King Creole, I think the entire Presley story would have turned out different.
Yeah. And then Variety Magazine, we have these are our news articles now giving reviews. We have May 28th, 1958. They say Hal Walls has attempted to take the curse off Elvis Presley for those still resistant to his charm by giving him an extraordinary backing in King Cruel. A solid melodrama with plenty of action and color. The Paramount presentation shows the young singer this time as a better than fair actor in all fairness, Presley does show himself to be a surprisingly sympathetic and believable actor on occasion.
And then Billboard said May 26, 1958, quote, incidents and characters of the original novel are distorted, but the plot stands up well and the dialogue is salty. As Danny, Presley exhibits improved histrionics and provides many moving and tense moments.
And then the last article we have from our newspaper is the New York Times on July 4th, 1958. They say, as the lad himself might say, cut my legs off and call me Shorty. Elvis Presley can act. I don't get this, but I love it. They also say, it's a pleasure to find him up to a little more than Bourbon Street shouting and wiggling, acting in his assignment in this shrewdly upholstered showcase. And he does it. So help us over a picket fence.
Yep.
Those newspaper articles back in the day.
And so the last little part is that from Elvis Day by Day, it says for the 2nd of July, 1958, that King Creole opens in theaters nationwide. It appears for 4 weeks at Variety's national box office survey, peaking at number 5, which I think Jailhouse Rock was number 7. So anyway, this one was my favorite. I love King Creole. It's the one I've seen the most.
Yep.
There are Elvis movies that I have not seen, and
she
I will see them.
Yeah.
I have to watch them soon. There's actually like a decent number I haven't seen. So I will be watching those soon.
Yep.
And then I'll give you my thoughts.
Good. But those were the 4 that we were covering this week. Next week, I think we'll do like the first 3 from the 1960s and do it that way.
Yep.
So thanks. Thanks for listening to us chat. Girl phrasing.
Yeah.
That's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Chronicles of the King podcast.
If you love what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps bring the King's story to life.
You can follow us on social media at the Chronicles of the King for updates, upcoming series, and more. We'd love to hear your input and any of your favorite Elvis moments.
Until next time, keep rocking and rolling, and we'll be back soon with more stories from Elvis's extraordinary life.
With TLC, we'll see you on the next episode of the Chronicles of the King.